Out of school suspension, helpful or more harm than good? Selena Alanis, Allison Johnson, Christina Castillo, and Rosana Guzman. Brown, Group 1. Balancing discipline and equity.
Out-of-school suspension is used for serious misconduct. There was an increase in the use of out-of-school suspension in the 1980s, which correlates with the rise in crime in the United States around that same time. This is also around the time that zero-tolerance policies were created to address concerns over possible serious threats and acts of violence in schools, like possession of a weapon or possession of drugs or selling of drugs. For these types of infractions and other serious misconduct, out-of-school suspension is an essential disciplinary action for school administrators. In addition, there are federal and state laws that will help guide schools in its appropriate use.
Inequity of marginalized groups and disproportionality. OSS disproportionately impacts marginalized groups. Research shows that Black and Hispanic students and those with disability are more likely to be suspended than their white peers. These disparities are evident in school district data across the U.S. Suspended students face long-term negative effects, including a higher likelihood of involvement with the juvenile justice system, contributing to the school-to-prison pipeline. This phenomenon disproportionately affects students of color, perpetuating cycles of disadvantage and limiting future opportunities. Frequent and severe discipline measures can lead to psychological effects. To address these issues, schools should implement restorative justice practices and culturally responsive interventions. Behavior deterrent or detriment to success?
Out-of-school suspension as a deterrent and school commitment to maintain safety. It is imperative that teachers, administrators, and other school staff maintain student safety as their top priority. Suspending a student after an incident of serious misconduct sends a clear message to all stakeholders that the campus is committed to maintaining school safety. Although it should not be considered the first option, out-of-school suspension may act as a deterrent for future misbehavior from the suspended student as well as other students. And when used appropriately in accordance with guidelines, OSS does not always result in negative consequences for the student. Studies have shown that collaboration between parents, teachers, and administrators during and after out-of-school suspension may lead to improved student behavior.
OSS is one of the primary indicators of high school dropout. The purpose of OSS is to decrease infractions and their severity. However, the research shows that students who get suspended once are likely to get suspended again. This shows that OSS is not an effective tool for changing behavior. And once they get suspended, they are more likely to drop out of school. Researcher Robert Balfans found that students who were suspended once in 9th grade dropped out of high school twice as often as their peers who were not suspended. OSS is one of the primary indicators of high school dropout. This shows that preventing students from coming to school does not benefit the student or help the young person grow and develop. Young children are learning effective communication and conflict resolution techniques, often basing their behaviors on the models they see in school. Instead of OSS, one school district cut its suspensions in half through restorative justice strategies like the youth court program at Richmond High School. The main takeaway is that restorative justice practices where students can learn from their mistakes and grow are much more beneficial to the student than OSS.
Safety versus stability.
Immediate removal of safety threat. In 2017, Brassov and Peterson note discipline policies are used to control student behavior and in doing so create a positive and productive learning environment. Districts and elected board members approve a student handbook outlining different offenses and their consequences. Out-of-school suspensions are particularly used to immediately remove a safety threat, and this threat can be any type that can disrupt a learning environment. The safety of the entire campus is top priority, and immediately removing the student that is a threat can assist with the investigation process and, depending on the infraction, referral to DAP may deem necessary. Therefore, out-of-school suspensions are necessary in maintaining a safe environment.
School suspension causes academic disruptions. Suspension causes significant academic disruption, leading to gaps in knowledge and skills, especially for those disadvantaged students. Students suspended multiple times face a higher risk of falling behind, resulting in frustration, disengagement, and hopelessness about their academic future. Traditional out-of-school suspensions have negative lasting effects increasing the likelihood of students entering the prison system. Alternative discipline measures such as reverse suspension prevent academic disruption and keep students engaged in their education. Reverse suspension at Cleveland Middle School involves parents in the educational experience, reducing the time students are removed from the classroom. Involving parents fosters a stronger homeschool connection, promoting better behavior and academic engagement among students. Effects on students and their families.
A reset opportunity for students. Out-of-school suspensions are sometimes an effective way for students to cool off and regulate their emotions in a safe setting and away from other students. This consequence is particularly important for the infraction of mutual combat. All parties need the time to reset and calm down before returning to school. Out-of-school suspensions are used to protect the learning environment for the rest of the student population. A reset in emotions can be very necessary in preventing continued disruption from the offenders. For example, there have been incidents where there have been mutual fights. The students were able to get away without any consequences, and this resulted in multiple additional fights from the same students along with others. Again, removing the threat to the disruption of the learning environment is a way to allow students to reset and regulate their emotions while promoting a safe environment at the campus.
OSS is one of the primary indicators of high school dropout. The purpose of OSS is to decrease infractions and their severity. However, the research shows that students who get suspended once are likely to get suspended again. This shows that OSS is not an effective tool for changing behavior. And once they get suspended, they are more likely to drop out of school. Researcher Robert Balfans found that students who were suspended once in 9th grade dropped out of high school twice as often as their peers who were not suspended. OSS is one of the primary indicators of high school dropout. This shows that preventing students from coming to school does not benefit the student or help the young person grow and develop. Young children are learning effective communication and conflict resolution techniques, often basing their behaviors on the models they see in school. Instead of OSS, one school district cut its suspensions in half through restorative justice strategies like the youth court program at Richmond High School. The main takeaway is that restorative justice practices where students can learn from their mistakes and grow are much more beneficial to the student than OSS.
In conclusion, the following recommendations are suggested. In the argument for OSS, we must clearly define serious misconduct to ensure consistent and fair use of OSS and develop comprehensive safety plans that include OSS as a last resort. We must provide alternative educational programs during suspension periods to prevent academic setbacks, such as online classes or tutoring. We must engage parents and guardians through meetings before and after suspension to address the root cause of misconduct and plan for improvements, and train staff on effective disciplinary practices. Recommendations for the argument against OSS. We must adopt restorative justice practices to repair harm and restore relationships instead of punishing students. We must implement preventative measures like social-emotional learning programs and mental health support to address issues before they escalate. And finally, we must monitor disciplinary data to ensure equitable treatment, provide increased support for at-risk students through mentoring and after-school activities, and utilize in-school suspension programs to minimize academic disruption while providing necessary support.